So if you followed the channel for any length of time, you will know that I am passionate about nature and conservation. And though I love farming, when I moved back to land that's been in my family for over 100 years, the main thing that I wanted to do was create an oasis for local wildlife. Now that is all well and good, but unless you're backed with thousands and thousands of pounds, it doesn't pay the bills. So that means I've got to find ways on this farm to create some income to help fund all the conservation. Some of that's with the farming, some of that's with the pop-up campsite, and next year I hope that some of that will be through wildlife tourism. Now I'm lucky that there's loads of wildlife already here, and actually in the description below I've left a link to our biodiversity list which I've been collating over the past few years. You can just see here actually there's a little path that goes through here and goes through that way, and that's signs of creatures. It's probably a fox, but we've also got cameras all over the property that I try and pick up images and videos of lovely creatures. So I've got some more traditional wildlife cams, the ones that come with batteries and you put a chip into and then you just go and retrieve the chip every day. But I've also got this fantastic Keen camera. It's brand new from Reolink, and it's live, so you can stream it on your phone and then you can watch, and you can also throw a chip into it and you can remote access the chip to see what's on there. And we've had a few fantastic spots, including this fallow hind that I showed you in our last video about the farm and the regenerative stuff. But also, I think this is a roe buck who appeared a couple of days ago. And our pesky spider keeps coming back as well and covering the lens. But the other day, I can say the badgers are back. Now you might remember I discovered the pair of badgers earlier this year, back in the winter. And then a pair of foxes moved in and they were living happily side by side. The foxes then had 5 cubs and the badgers disappeared. And I was worried that they were gone for good. However, there have been signs of the badgers, and I have seen one single badger on the Keen camera. Here under this old sycamore tree is our set. And earlier this year, the badgers inhabited this hole and the foxes inhabited this hole. Now the cubs have grown up, the foxes have naffed off, and it seems that some great excavation work, and there's some poo as well, has been happening with the badgers as they move back in. You can see all of this sand that's been thrown out as they're managing their hole. There's also some telltale signs that they're renovating, because this is all nesting material that's been thrown out, and here and here, and actually there's another hole that they've been using over this side. And actually they've done some work since yesterday, because there's loads of nesting material here that's been pulled out as they're getting ready to bring new stuff in for winter. Another sign that there are badgers around is this hole in the ground, and this, which is leftover bits of wasp nest. Now I don't know about you, but I can't think of much worse than digging out a wasp's nest, especially if I'm an animal where I'm going to be stung to hell. And the only thing that would probably do that is a badger. And you can see here that the ground has been really opened up. There's still some wasps in this nest, but it's really dug it out quite successfully. Now my trail camera for the set is here. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that badgers often have a couple of sets that they move between. And I'm hoping that perhaps when the foxes raised their family, the pair of badgers moved off and maybe had a family of themselves. So I want to get this camera back into operation, because there were only 2 badgers earlier this year. If that family has expanded, then it's very likely they went off and had babies and then have come back to their winter home. So of course it's great to have all this wildlife, but how does that make you money? And the answer is, I hope, through a degree of wildlife tourism, because you only have to look at the money. Oh God, I'm trying to climb up this slope. You only have to look at nature reserves and things, and the people that go there to take photos, to explore, to do wildlife walks, to realise that actually funding nature is quite high on a lot of people's agenda. And so if you can create a habitat like this, people are willing to come and pay some money and explore. So one thing that I'm going to be doing this winter is building some hides, one of which is right over there through that gap. Now I can't walk across this field because I'm in shorts and I'll get absolutely scrubbed to death. So I'll be with you in a minute once I've made my way over. I've also just spotted a little muntjac deer and I don't want to disturb it because it went running off in that direction. So we'll go around the edge. So the plan is to strim or mow a footpath along this hedge line. And guys, this year has been an assault on all fronts because we had the ride-on mower fixed and 2 days later something else broke it. And then I've also burnt through 2 brand new Bosch strimmers this year, so I'm not particularly impressed. So I'm currently without a strimmer or a mower. But the plan, as I say, is to have a footpath coming down this hedge line. And then up into this field where we will have a slightly raised bird or animal watching hide right here. I'm going to build it in slightly the same way as I did the cabin, on a slightly raised platform, and the idea will be that it can be rented out for photographers to come and take photos. Now this field is fantastic. The wood here is home to many species, so we get a lot of deer, hare, foxes, badgers. There is a buzzard flying back. They breed in this woodland over here. And then of course we have a lot of the smaller birds. So we have yellowhammer. We found a flock of snipe the other day. And they all visit this field. It's the furthest away from any habitation or roads, so I think the wildlife feels safer here. Now, as with a lot of photographic hides, we do also have to do some infrastructure work, because although there are animals all over the farm, we want them to come to the hide, because you don't want to rent out a hide for a few hundred and then nothing comes. So the plan is the hide will be here. We're going to put a small shallow pond in front, possibly that we light up at night, so there's some sort of options for night photography with some light work, and then a few rustic fence posts, feeders, things that the birds will come along. We erected just a single fence post in a field way over there, and actually a barn owl now uses it to sit on and hunt, and also bring up its pellets, because we found all the pellets below. One of our barn owl boxes is just up here, although no barn owls have been in it. Every single year a jackdaw family comes along, and that's one of the issues, because jackdaws start their breeding season before owls, and so they move in. But I don't mind, it's still very nice. Look, there's blackberries down here. Don't mind if I do. Very nice. So that is the plan for this field. We'll have a hide, we'll have some photography options, and then people will be able to come and rent the hide and hopefully get some beautiful wildlife photography pictures. I also know that deer frequent this meadow a lot, because when I put in lots of baby trees down there, they all got eaten, and I put in a lovely pine tree with a hazel grove around it, and they ate everything, so I need to replant that. I also thought they might have eaten my magnolia. So in this field we also have a big magnolia that we planted, or a little magnolia that we wanted it to grow into a big magnolia, where we were going to put all of our pets. It was going to be a pet cemetery. It's within the wildflower meadow here, and then we were going to strim paths into it for people to come and explore. However, the deer didn't get to the magnolia. This year's drought did. So I'm going to need to buy a new one of those. Another place I would like to put a hide in is at this bit of scrub, which looks like nothing, but it's actually a pond. And the pond is connected to the hedgerow, which makes it the perfect access point for animals that don't want to come out in the open. They can move up the hedgerow and get down to the water's edge. And then the pond is over there. Now, as you know, it's been horrendously dry this year, And so the current state of the pond is this. It's completely empty. I should not be able to walk across here, but I can. However, it is giving me the perfect opportunity to clear it out. So ideally, as I said before, I want this backside staying scrub, so animals that want shelter to come down to the water's edge and take a drink. And I want this edge open. You can see there's a lot of bramble on the edge, but I have begun to cut back in places. I've also taken, oh, there's a pheasant just disappearing over there. I've also begun to take off a lot of these branches that were overhanging, so I don't want them to drop all of their deciduous leaves in, and also just clearing this side, because although I want this side to be scrubby, I don't want all of these branches coming over into the pond and dropping their leaves. I am, however, going to leave this beautiful fallen branch, because I can imagine when the water's high, something sat on there looking into the water. I mean, dare I say, a kingfisher or something similar would be a stunning, stunning photo. So obviously there is a lot of work, both clearing ponds, clearing areas, building hides, and then obviously advertising the hides and making sure that they are worth their money in terms of people coming. But I do find it very exciting. And if you're enjoying the video or finding it of any use, please consider subscribing. And if you'd like to support the endeavours on the farm, there is also the option to buy a virtual coffee. The link is in the description below. Something else that I'm planning to do is wildlife walks and farm tours, because when you actually start looking around, there's so much to see. Like, many people may just see this meadow as just a brown dead meadow, but I think it's glorious. There is so much in here. There is so many. All of these seed heads will attract animals and birds especially. There's so many different species of plant that have moved in. It's just a paradise. All of these brown sea heads are just food for everything. I'm also quite the bug nerd. I like bugs because you can get up and close and personal. You know, you can't get that close to a deer or a bird. Although I have found that the best way to kind of set yourself into a wildlife setting is just not to pay them any attention. So now if I see animals, I don't stop and stare, because that's a threat. I stop and I glance and I walk on by, and actually gradually some of the animals, the rabbits, the hares, the pheasants, etc., are starting to get used to that. But bugs, you can get super up close and personal with. Under a macro lens, they are so cool and vivid and alien. So I'm looking forward to kind of sharing that world with people as well. And by the way, if you're wondering how the goats are getting on with their thistle chomp, it's going quite well. It might not look that they have tackled a vast amount of thistles in this field, but if we look down here, closest to where the netting is, you can see that most of these thistles have been eaten off, and they're gradually working their way across. So I think we have a result in dealing with the thistle problem with our boys. And then finally, I have one big, huge dream, which it may never come to fruition, but we've all got to have dreams, right? And that is that once our farm is fully rewilded, which means we've got the entire acreage fenced all around the outside, we've let the animals out, we're basically letting nature take its course, and our grazers kind of shape the land how they would more in a natural environment, I would love to build some elevated lodges for people to stay in. Now this is where we have our pop-up campsite on this field up here with these beautiful, beautiful oak trees. Now I have no knowledge in building or DIY or anything like that, but the idea would be that we would have 2 or 3 elevated lodges, perhaps in and around the oak trees, that people could rent. You could come and they'd have a balcony, and you could sit on the balcony in the morning, have a cup of tea and look over the rewilded farm plains, which by then would have a herd of cattle, a few donkeys, some sheep, just grazing around, along with all of the wildlife. Now there's a hell of a lot of regulation in that, I'm sure. There's a hell of a lot of building and insurance and whether it's even feasible. But I would want to live in one of them. Not only just to look out in the morning, but these oak trees are just absolutely magnificent. You know, we're looking at 500 to 700 years old. The things they have seen and the ecological habitat that's within each of those trees itself. So that is a dream for the future. But again, tying in to the ecotourism of the farm. And if you need to know more about wildlife and ecotourism and what we're doing here on the farm in general, check out this video where I explain even more.